Hello and welcome. This is our The Athletics College Hoops live stream post-selection show. We have an NCAA tournament. We have an NCAA tournament bracket. It's a very exciting time. We've waited basically 2 years for this now. And so we're going to celebrate by spending the next half hour or so, maybe 35 minutes, whatever, talking about our brackets. I'll be with, I'm Eamon Brennan. I'm a writer, college basketball writer at The Athletic. I'll be with my friends and colleagues, CJ Moore and CJ Holmes. And we will be taking your questions and comments in the chat. We'll be helping you with your bracket. We're going to be talking about our Final Four picks, which we made in a huge rush. There's CJ Moore on the left and CJ Holmes on the right. Hey, guys, welcome in.
What's up?
How you doing? Let's do this.
It's like I said, it's a very exciting time, and where I think we're probably all a little bit tired. It's been a long champ week, but this time of the day on Selection Sunday, just as a little hint for everybody watching, you sort of get by on adrenaline and joy at this time of the day. So like I said, we will take questions and comments coming in. We have already got one that says hello from Ethiopia. What's up? That's awesome. Yeah. And we are going to let's start off. We did a quick immediate Final Four picks, first instinct sort of thing. I'm going to go ahead and jump out on a limb here and say that having done this a lot in the past, where I'm told by like a producer or whomever that I need to make my picks really fast, that's not a sacred oath. So if you're in a bracket group with me and you see me later this week with a different Final Four, I reserve the right to change it. But my Final Four, I'll just lead us off, is 3 number 1 seeds. It's Gonzaga, Illinois, Baylor, and then I've got Alabama coming out of the East. And I think that's going to be the one where we see, I think with Michigan having Isaiah Livers hurt, that's going to be the one where we see the most variance. I just think Alabama is the most interesting team out of there, but I was also very tempted by Texas and CJ Moore. I know you were as well.
Yeah, for sure. I went like you, Gonzaga, Baylor, Illinois, and then Texas. I think you changed it up on us after I picked Texas, so I'm going to look dumb when Texas gets beat by Stephen F. Austin in the first round. I'm definitely nervous with Texas bracket, but I can't quit that team. I love their talent. I love their personnel, experience. They look really good last night against Oklahoma State. So I'm back on the bandwagon. We'll see. I would probably have Michigan in there if it wasn't for Isaiah Livers. I think there are 4. I think it's one of those years like 2008 where you could potentially see 4 1 seeds, but without Isaiah Livers, I'm a little nervous for Michigan. I hope he gets back. I hope we see him at least in the second weekend.
Yeah, CJ Holmes. The immediate thought when you sent your Final Four to the group earlier was that's chalky, because that's my first instinct anytime you see 4 number 1 seeds. But the more you think about it and you think about this whole season that we've had, maybe Livers injury accepted, and we don't know how long he's going to be out. He could be back by the second weekend or something. You never know. But it is the kind of year where there are pretty clearly now 4 teams that are a tier above, and maybe you put Gonzaga a half step above everybody else. But those 4 teams are the best 4 teams in the country by a fair amount.
I mean, yeah, just immediate reaction. Gonzaga, Michigan, Illinois, and Baylor. I mean, they've been 4 of the best teams in college basketball all year round. And, looking at the bracket and kind of how that shook out, I just think that they're more than likely the 4 teams that are going to get there. If I can go ahead and take a step further and pick my national championship favorite.
Please do, yeah.
I'm going to go with the Baylor Bears. I'm huge on guard play, and guard play matters. Playmaking matters, especially in March in the NCAA tournament. And, between guys like Davion Mitchell, Maceo Teague, Baylor has a lot of playmaking in that position. I think it's gonna do them wonders this time of the year. Not to mention they're such a strong defensive team. I think that combination of offensive firepower and defensive prowess is going to win them a national championship this year.
Yeah, the thing about Baylor that when you were just saying that strikes me is there are teams that go into the NCAA tournament as number 1 seeds that you can see them having an off night and things not working very well. Like if Iowa had been a number 1 seed this year, even as a number 2 seed, it's not impossible to imagine Iowa just having some sort of nightmare, 3 of 28 night from 3, and they're just not, they just can't keep pace with someone they're playing. It's very difficult to imagine Baylor, even if it does get beat at some point along the line, that not being an absolute battle. They are gonna, if you're gonna beat Baylor in the NCAA tournament, it's not gonna be like the UMBC Virginia game all due respect to Virginia, where the game is over with like 10 minutes left to go. Like Baylor is too good and too balanced, like you said, on both ends of the floor, to really give that up. Texas is another one for me. We're talking about speaking of the Big 12, that you said you can't quit the Longhorns. They've been good all year, man. Like that roster, particularly that top 5, top 6 guys, with the balance they have. And, there are a lot of rosters out there this year that are like, look at Ohio State, right? Ohio State is a really good team that I think has just vastly overachieved its talent, but there are real flaws in terms of personnel. And Texas doesn't have that. I think of any other team in that side of the bracket, and I picked Alabama, and I'll be honest, as a behind the scenes, I kind of am leaning Texas the more I talk about them. There just aren't too many flaws in their personnel if they get it right, CJ Moore.
Jericho Sims is about the perfect big man to go into this tournament with. Like, he's awesome defensively. And then, the other day I wrote about him at The Athletic this weekend, and he was phenomenal last night against Oklahoma State. There's just not many dudes built like him who are as athletic as him, defend out on the floor, defend in the paint. And then their guard play is really, really good. And I think Matt Coleman, like, watching that game last night, did he have like a little more juice to you guys than usual? I mean, he always is a dude that brings it, but like, he had a little pep in his step last night. And I really like that roster. I think there's times when they play a little selfish. Greg Brown has 2 assists all year or something stupid like that. But man, they weren't even playing him. Shaka barely even played him last night. I love Kai Jones in the starting lineup. I think that Shaka is. I wrote about this earlier this year. Like, I thought he needed to tighten his rotation a little bit, and I think he's done that. So I'm pretty much all in on Texas. I've been wanting to pick Baylor all year to be my national champ, but I will say I'm a little nervous about the fact that Baylor is not post-COVID is not guarding like pre-COVID Baylor did. That's what, if Baylor can get that defensive juice back and start defending the way that the Bears did last year and they did for early on this year, then that'll be the team. But the 2 things that makes me hesitant about Baylor is the defense not defending at the level it has, and then also the thing I like about teams like Illinois and Gonzaga is it is nice when the 3 balls aren't dropping, you can throw it into that big dude. And they got big dudes who can eat. And Baylor doesn't really have that. It's all on the guards.
Yeah.
That boy, Kofi Cockburn, was going to work today. Oh, my goodness.
He's a beast, and he's gotten so much better. We'll talk about Illinois really quickly here. Anyone who was waiting for the selection show to start forever today while Illinois finished off the Big Ten title game against Ohio State honestly, probably for the very casual college basketball fans out there who just tune in this time of year, it was probably good for those folks so they could see how good Illinois is. Mm-hmm. Illinois' strength has always been its dudes. Like, Ayo Dosunmu is one of the best 2 or 3 players in the country. Kofi this year is vastly improved. Like, he was a big guy last year and a big body this year. His touch is better. His feet are better. He was getting horribly exposed early in the season on pick and roll. He's better there. And so, yeah, it's those 2 guys being so good has always been their strength. It was their strength last year, but everything they've added in around them, I'm like the president and a member in good standing of the Andre Curbelo fan club. That guy is going to be a problem for 4 years, but I don't know if he'll be, I don't know. He might not be if he continues progressing at this, if he gets a jumper, he's done. But the Trent Frazier as a senior guard, they've got 3-point shooting now. They guard it incredibly well. And yeah, Coburn is just a beast down low.
You know what Curbelo's sophomore year is going to be like? It's going to be like when Kevin Durant left and DJ Augustine was still around, and it was his show to run, right?
Oh yeah,
that's going to be.
He's going to run it too.
I might have to fight you for head of the president of the fan club or whatever, because I'm all about that kid. But and they that's why you make these judgments on teams early on. I saw the only game I've been to this year is Missouri beating Illinois. That's the only time I sat in an arena this year and watched a game. And but Illinois is just so much better than they were there. And obviously Baylor, they took it to the Illini early on, but it's a different Illinois team now. So man, like all year I've been feeling like Gonzaga, Baylor, or Michigan's going to win the national title, but I haven't decided yet. I might pick Illinois. We'll see.
Let me ask you guys this: when looking at Gonzaga's region, what's one team you guys think can give them the most trouble?
So I think personally that Gonzaga got a pretty good draw. I think, Missouri has given a lot of people tough games, but they're maybe I don't know if they're overseeded as a 9, but they were certainly overrated at various points throughout the year, I think. I think Creighton is an eminently beatable team, as we saw the other night. Virginia, who knows what Virginia's going to look like in a week's time. They might be whole, but we don't know. And, Gonzaga's already proven it can beat Iowa on a neutral floor. So, Kansas is probably the team out of that region, I'd say, that looks the most sort of down the stretch of the year, assuming David McCormick's healthy. And by healthy, I mean available to play because of the COVID stuff. Slightly different distinction there, but you guys get my drift. That I think that's the team that could maybe give Gonzaga real issues, because the way Kansas guarded down the stretch and the way McCormick got it going, that actually to me matches up pretty well personnel-wise, at least on that end of the floor defensively, with what Gonzaga has in Drew Timme and oftentimes 4 guard forwards playing around him.
Yeah, I think their bracket is pretty nice for them. Like it's hard to pick another team to get to a Final Four out of that region. I mean, unless somehow Gonzaga gets beat before the Elite Eight, like, Iowa, I could see Iowa playing in a Final Four. It's just after watching that Iowa Gonzaga game earlier this year, I don't see how you do it.
Okay, I think we lost CJ Moore there for a second, so we'll continue on. He's got an audio issue or something. Yeah, I agree with where he was going with that. It's hard for me to imagine Iowa beating Gonzaga simply because, for as good as there he is, he's back. I was going to follow up with what your point where I think you were going, which is that I think Iowa's defense has improved this year. I think they're a pretty decent defensive team. I don't see how they stop Gonzaga's offense, though. Like, there's one thing between being slightly better as on the defensive end to the point where you're better in the Big Ten. I don't think they're that improved.
Yeah. It's like when they play Illinois, the defense doesn't look as good as it does against like Rutgers.
Yeah.
I think that they've figured it out enough to slow teams that aren't that good defensively or aren't great offensive teams. But I think when they play like really, really, really good offenses with great guard play, I still think their defense is just not up to par. But yeah, so anyway, I apologize for that. I was telling my dad to turn the damn water off.
Good. Okay, so let's do this really quickly, since we had this comment in the chat, and thank you from Ray Marcano for saying good job. We appreciate it. We had a comment from Jerry Joy, who said, "What are Villanova's chances?" And we happen to have someone who covers Villanova very closely. I picked in our sort of little pregame chat about this. I thought Villanova was my team most likely to be upset. Just if you look at sort of where they are without Colin Gillespie. CJ, you cover Villanova pretty closely. You've written about them post Gillespie's injury. What are your thoughts?
I mean, it's hard to have much faith in this Villanova team heading into the NCAA tournament. Even with Gillespie, this is a team that struggled mightily in the month of February, especially at the defensive end. Now, without Gillespie, you're losing your leader. You're losing you're losing your floor general. You're losing the guy who kind of sets the pace and sets the tone and gets guys in line. You're losing your floor general, and this time of the year to lose a guy like that, it's just a huge blow. Nova's kind of limping into the postseason right now. They've lost 5 of their last 10. They get eliminated by Georgetown, who went on to win the Big East championship. So I guess in retrospect, that loss doesn't look as bad. But still, I mean, you got Chris Arcidiacono out there running the show, and although he's done a pretty solid job, I mean, he still can't make up for what you lose in Gillespie. And then on top of all that, you got Justin Moore, who's banged up with an ankle. When I look at this Winthrop game, this 5-12 matchup, what immediately jumps out to me is the fact that this is a Winthrop team that likes to go 11 deep. They have good guard play. They're balanced inside and out. I just think over the course of a 40-minute game, that can really wear Villanova down, especially a team that's, doesn't have a lot of depth, both outside and inside right now.
In Winthrop's case, like that's a team that didn't really get a chance to play a lot of high major teams this year, but they're 23-1. So, that's a good team. And I think that in a normal year, when they could have gotten some other folks on the schedule a little bit more easily, they probably would have, they would at least would have had a game or two on the road at a high major team that, would have given us a little bit better idea of sort of where they sit. But the suspicion here anyway is that Winthrop team is really good. And CJ, you were people in the chat may or may not know this. You played basketball in college. Could you describe, and this is just a curiosity from my point of view, what it would be like as a player in the day-to-day, maybe even especially in a season like this, but just in general, to lose a guy who is so foundational as Colin Gillespie at this stage of the season? What does that do to a team's sort of morale?
It's a huge blow, man. It's a huge blow. I'm just thinking back, my time at Auburn. If we would have had an opportunity to play in the NCAA, we would have lost guys like Chris Denson or KT Orrell down the stretch. I mean, it's huge. Those guys weren't only our leading scorers. They weren't only like integral parts of our starting lineup. I mean, they were our leaders. And to lose that, it's huge, man. In the case of Gillespie, like I said, it's not necessarily, what you're losing from a production standpoint, right? And, numbers, I think he averaged somewhere between like 12 or 14 points per game this season, 4 rebounds, 5 assists. You can make that up collectively, right? You still got guys like Jeremiah Robinson Earl, Justin Moore, Jermaine Samuels, who's really been picking it up from an offensive standpoint as of late. But in terms of that leadership, those, like I said, those late game scenarios, that's really what hurt Villanova against Georgetown, right? You get 11-point lead, about 8 minutes to go, and they just didn't run their stuff in a way to keep Georgetown at bay, right? You weren't getting the quality of shots that you would get if a Gillespie is out there on the floor. You're not getting that leadership to kind of pull guys together when Georgetown was going on a run. And, it just hurts. It just hurts. It's unfortunate. And, I don't know who that guy is going to be for Villanova, who's going to take the leadership standpoint. I mean, even with Gillespie out there, those dudes are, basically like robots on the floor. There's not a lot of passion and, guys playing with energy, not necessarily from a, running your action standpoint, but, you get a stop, someone's getting up off the ground after taking a charge and, yelling at the top of their lungs. There's just not a lot of that. And, for Villanova to lose that this late in the season, it's a brutal blow.
Yeah, it absolutely is. It's going to be really interesting to see what happens with Villanova. It's hard to imagine them making a deep run now, but there are teams that we think probably can make a deep run, and maybe Winthrop, their first-round opponent, is one of them. Let's talk about some of the teams that we think can do that are maybe less obvious. I think I'll get one out of the way in Loyola Chicago. I think that's a team that as an 8 seed, you look at like their KenPom.com adjusted efficiency rank, which has been this way pretty much all year, is currently 9. They've been in the top 10 for most of the year. The fact that they're an 8 seed, that's the one big hurdle for maybe Illinois in the first weekend in the second round. We talked about Winthrop, Colgate. I'm starting to suspect the net is onto something with Colgate. Colgate's been top 10 in the net for a very long time. It's been kind of a running joke with Bubble Watch and everything else. I think, considering that they just cruised to the Patriot League title with basically no resistance from the rest of the league, Colgate might actually be better than people think. And then Oregon, really quick on Oregon. It's a team that had a long COVID pause in the middle of the year, had a couple of them kind of got off track, and then since has come back and won 12 out of 13, something along those lines. I don't have it right in front of me, but they've won more than they've lost, and they've looked really impressive doing it. I'd keep an eye out for Oregon as a 7 seed, particularly with Dana Altman's history in the NCAA tournament. He's a guy who there are just some coaches who are really good at getting teams to click this time of year, can prepare scouts and game plans in 2 days, 2-day turnarounds really well, can grind out wins. I think he's one of them. CJ Moore, let's start with you. What are some of your sleepers and why?
Well, to piggyback on your Oregon point, I was there, I I think the last time we had an NCAA tournament, San Jose matchup zone, Dana Allman's matchup zone, like that's impossible.
It's a nightmare. It's a nightmare for teams.
Oregon's a good call. First team I like, Virginia. We don't know what Virginia is going to be, right? Do we know what their roster is going to look like when they get there? So Ohio, Jason Preston tore up Illinois this year. He's a really, really, really good player. One of the best stories in college basketball. I believe our boy Bennett did a big story on him this year, didn't he? Brian Bennett. So yeah, he is that dude can go. They got a coach in former Ohio State assistant Jeff Bowles, who's been to NCAA tournaments, knows what's up. So I think could be a little, it could be a sneaky team to go. And then they would get, let's see, who would they get in the second round potentially?
Ohio? They get Creighton or UCSB.
Yeah, like Creighton's a little vulnerable right now. Like Creighton's one of those teams that I've kind of wanted more out of all year.
Mm-hmm.
I had pretty high expectations for in the preseason. If y'all read my Mitch Pollock story, you know how I feel about that dude. Like he's so much fun. But I would love to see Creighton get to the Sweet 16 and face Gonzaga because, wow, Creighton has been kind of up and down, and you don't know. Like CJ, you've seen them go up against Nova, like when Nova's pretty good, and they're scary. So that might be a scary matchup for Gonzaga in the Sweet 16.
Yeah, CJ Holmes, what are some of your teams
all
that
of
you're
my
looking
sleeper picks?
Go ahead.
I won't get into all of my sleeper picks, but it as a 4 seed in the Midwest. I mean, first and foremost, this is a team that wasn't even supposed to be in this situation. They're able to get the appeal through the NCAA, and now they're playing their best basketball at the right time. They were able to make it to the Big 12 title game where they fell to Texas. But really, every year when March Madness comes around, I think about Kemba Walker, right, and the run he was able to put together with UConn, and who are the guys in college basketball this year in this year's field who can put together something similar. And I think Cade Cunningham is more than capable of doing that. He's playing his best ball right now. The team is surging, and I think that they're a team that can carry that momentum and go a little further in this thing than they think. For those reasons, I feel the same way about UConn and James Bouknight.
My only pushback on that is, how can we call Cade Cunningham a sleeper? Like, how can we call Oklahoma State a sleeper? That team they just beat Baylor. They just beat West Virginia. They just made the Big 12 title game. Like, that team is really good. And I don't know about you guys, but I feel like Oklahoma State has maybe improved more from November to now than just about anybody. Like we talked about Illinois earlier. I think they've taken a big step. But I think from like when I watched Oklahoma State earlier, I was like Cade Cunningham's really good. I just don't know about the rest of that team. And those dudes have gotten a lot better. So I like the pick. I just don't know if we can call Cade a sleeper.
What about you guys? Who are players in this year's field that you guys think that can really put their respective teams on their backs and make a deep run?
Bouknight's a good call. I like UConn to go a little, to go at least Sweet 16. I think that's a team that its metrics might not show how good it is because he missed so much time.
Mm-hmm.
That's the team that I could see going.
If Bouknight was healthy all year, I think he would have been the Big East, player of the year, by a landslide of this weird 3-way tie we got.
Yeah, I think he's a great call, and UConn is a really interesting, sneaky team because they were a sideline for so long, and then he was injured after they got back, and so they were kind of a work in progress almost all season until February, and since then they've played great, gotten sort of into the top 20, and Ken Pom, I think they're top 25 somewhere in there, so they've come along. One guy to keep an eye on if he is playing particularly well for Houston is Quentin Grimes. They're more of a collective. I don't think he needs to be 30 and 5 or 30 and 10 for them to advance. It's just a really, really good defensive team that gets the job done on the offensive end, even if they can be a little bit of a grind to watch at sometimes at various points. But at their best, as we saw in the American final on Sunday, they just completely ground Cincinnati into a paste. I mean, they're just, When Houston's good, they're really, really good. Another guy's maybe Aaron Henry at Michigan State. If Michigan State can get going a little bit, if he's playing well, I think they figured out how to use him down the stretch a little bit. Early in the year, it was a lot of outside in, trying to drive and get at the rim. I remember that game at Duke, where he was, he plays like that, but they've done a lot of stuff where they invert the post with him now, and they let him catch in the mid post, and like they figured out how to use him in a way as not a particularly good outside shooter, but someone who has a lot of different, sort of tricky stuff he can do on the offensive end with his athleticism. He could be a guy who, if he has a hot weekend, like, will it surprise anyone? Particularly because we always have this in the first four. If you're filling out your bracket and you're looking for little tricks of the trade, like there's always a first four team that wins a game and then wins another game, and then all of a sudden they're in the Sweet 16. It almost always happens, and there's something about that, just getting minutes into your legs and getting the first game out of the way, sort of thing, that I think gives them an advantage over someone who's starting their NCAA tournament on, I guess this year it'll be Friday, Saturday, whatever. Michigan State, it's such a cliche to say, but they played a lot. They were a much different team down the stretch, and their 11 seed reflects their entire body of work, so to speak. But I think that's a team that is probably a lot better than their seed, even if their sort of numbers and adjusted efficiency rankings don't necessarily show it.
How about talking about Houston and that region? I think is just loaded. Like Illinois would have to go through potentially Loyola, who's where are they at KenPom now? Like ninth?
Yeah, they're ninth.
Yeah, and Cameron Krutwig is like really, really, really good. We know Porter Moser can coach his butt off. Like that's such a tough second round game. And then you potentially get Cade Cunningham and Oklahoma State in the Sweet 16. And then if they end up playing Houston in the Elite Eight, like what does Houston do? They take away your big guy. They're going to double team your big man, which they call a monster. They're better at it than like anybody. Like them and Virginia are probably traditionally the best teams at it, but Houston's really good at that. And they guard their butts off. So like Illinois, if that's the game, that'll be really tough. And if they get the other team I could see coming out of the bottom of that region is West Virginia. And West Virginia is really, really scary to play because they've got three dudes who can just jump up and make tough shots and can beat you basically on their own. And then they've got a dude, Derek Culver, who's a beast as well. So like I think that region, would you guys say that's the best like top to bottom region? Because I kind of talked out.
I would. 100% I would, especially looking at it now. Obviously, we're doing this pretty quickly after the bracket show, and I was trying to help my wife get the kids to bed and all that good stuff. Like sitting here, and while you were talking, I was just sitting here staring at the bracket going up and down. And yeah, man, like San Diego State's really good, and they've got to play Syracuse in the first round. And I think Syracuse is playing its best basketball now. That zone is always tough for teams in the NCAA tournament. It just is. Mm-hmm. They could give San Diego State some issues. They could give West Virginia some issues. And likewise, if West Virginia comes out of there, like that game against, let's say seeds hold, Sweet 16 game with West Virginia against Houston is just going to be like, that's a man's game.
Yeah.
That's a big time man's game with Hugs
with the knee pads, elbow pads.
Hugs and Kelvin will be squaring off on the sideline, arm wrestling while those guys fight for rebounds underneath. Yeah, I agree. And then we talked about Loyola Chicago, but Georgia Tech just won the ACC championship and beat a good Florida State team to do it.
But I say fade the ACC. Fade it. Just fade it.
I don't disagree with you there at all. But, like, let's just say if Loyola Chicago gets upset in the first round, which could happen, that's still not the easiest game in the world in the second round for Illinois. And yeah, if seeds hold, they will have played. Let's see. If let's say Illinois is going to get out of the Midwest. If seeds hold, they will have played Loyola, a top 10 team in KenPom, Tennessee, a top 5. No, not Tennessee. Oklahoma State, which will have beaten Tennessee.
And even if it is, like, Tennessee's scary. If Tennessee gets right, they got some.
If the NCAA tournament was decided by hand-to-hand combat, Tennessee would win easily.
Yeah, exactly right. And I mean, you look at, so not to get too bogged down there, but you look at that in the Midwest compared to Gonzaga's route in the West, and as we discussed earlier, man, here's where we lay it on the line. because we've kind of gone back and forth through some of these things. We talked about a couple sleepers. Do you guys think, and we'll start, CJ Holmes, we'll start with you. Do you guys think Gonzaga will go undefeated and win the national championship? You have the floor.
Look, I've been on a lot of radio shows this week, and every single one I've been on, I've slandered Gonzaga the first opportunity I get. I know they're a great team. I know offensively this is like, one of the more talented teams they've had in recent memory. Jalen Suggs, Corey Kispert, those guys on the inside. But I don't know. Just me, I just think that, they haven't really played anyone since when? Like early November. And when I look at that, when I look at the East, was it the East region? When I look at the East region, I mean, I know you guys say that, no, it's easy sledding, but you got teams like UConn in there, Maryland, Alabama, even a team like BYU. These are all teams that I think that at their best they could give Gonzaga some trouble. With that said, I just maybe they make it to the Final Four, but I don't know. Something's just my gut's just telling me that there's a chance that they won't make it out of that region.
Yeah. So, Gonzaga's in the West, so we should clarify real quick. You said the East. I agree that the East is also more challenging, but their matchups in the West, I think, are what are intriguing to me, as we kind of mentioned before. Apparently, Virginia has just done a press conference relatively during this call. I just saw some stuff on Twitter about it. They're still planning on being at the tournament, but again, there's no certainty as to how that stuff will all work out. If they get replaced with a different team, that would be crazy. I don't think that'll happen, but they may have a shorthanded rotation. Oklahoma and Missouri. I'll just say this. I totally understand your point about Gonzaga. They haven't played anyone really good for a long time. They played BYU, which is like a top 25-ish team, but that's about it. And they trailed BYU by a big chunk in the WCC title game, and then got their way back and still won by double digits because they're really good. But there are teams that we've seen this year that gave them a little trouble. A team like West Virginia gave them a little trouble. Big guys up front. Drew Timme is their real, Anton Wanson's a good player, but you can see Drew Timme getting worn out by really tough front courts. Like North Carolina, I think would give Gonzaga a hell of a game. I would love to see that, but they're just on opposite sides of the bracket. And I don't know, other than Kansas in this bracket, I just think the other best team in this bracket is definitely Iowa. And we've seen that game already. And I think those teams are basically what they were then. And Iowa just couldn't keep the pace. CJ Moore, what are your thoughts?
You're being way too nice. We can't let CJ get away with this Gonzaga slander.
I love how he just owned it too. He's like, every time I go on the radio, I slander them at every opportunity. It's hilarious.
They never play anybody. Like we've been fighting this for years as people in college basketball media. They're like, no, Gonzaga's actually good. Like they got to a national title game. They're really freaking good. The talent's awesome. Now, I will say, if they were in the Illini bracket and they had to play like you said, the physical teams, a Houston or a West Virginia, an Oklahoma State, those would be some scary matchups for them. I think the committee did them some favors with this. If Duke was really good this year, and Duke was like the undefeated number one team in the country, right?
Okay.
And Duke was had that draw, everybody would just be going nuts about, oh my gosh, they didn't put anybody in their region. But yeah, I can't just sit here and listen to this Gonzaga slander. It's the program plays in WCC every year. They've done really well in the NCAA tournament now for a long time. BYU's not bad. They go out and they play people in the non-conference, and we can't be having this. They haven't played anybody.
I totally agree. I've been fighting this for forever as well. As sort of it used to be Villanova back in the day. Then it was Gonzaga and Virginia, these teams who get reputations for being really good outside of one of three leagues and get crap from people. I will say that the BYU game gave me a little pause. BYU was off the charts offensively in the first half, and that didn't sustain in the second half. But there was a little bit of Gonzaga until they woke up in the second half. There was a little bit of that look that you see sometimes with teams where it's like, we're fine. We got this. It's fine. What, we're going to lose? No, come on. That's never going to happen. And all that happens in the NCAA tournament. It happens to good teams. It happened to Virginia, for that matter. That whole Virginia game against UMP, I'm not saying Gonzaga is going to lose in the first round or anything like it. I'm just saying that attitude is what gets teams beat. And it's hard to – I do think there's something to the idea that it is easy to get that into your system when you're beating Loyola Marymount by 50 every night. And it's not to say they won't go deep in the tournament. I think they will. If I had to pick someone, I think they'll win it. I think they're one of the best teams in the last 25 years, bar none. I'm just saying, I do agree that there is that you see that with teams sometimes, and it's scary if you pick them to win your bracket, if you see it early in the tournament. And that Virginia game is the one I'll always come back to, but you've seen it with other number one seeds. You see it with 2 seeds. It's like, we're not going to lose to these guys. It's fine. And the next thing you know, there's 10 minutes left in the game. And you're down by 5, and there won't be there'll be some crowds this year, but it won't be the same. But all of a sudden the crowd starts rooting for every basket that the 15 seed hits. And all of a sudden things get really nervous and dicey. I don't think that's going to happen, but I think Mark Few's not a dummy. He'll know that's the attitude that Gonzaga has to fight off like the plague, because if they have any slice of that, the NCAA tournament is just a different beast.
This might be, I haven't thought too much about this, but I think in the NCAA tournament, you're right. Like, when there's a crowd and a lower seed gets going, everybody jumps on that bandwagon once the higher seed to lose, right? And there's like this nervous energy, even if it's a high seed, like, I cover a lot of Kansas, right? So I'm thinking to the 2016 or 17, whenever it was in Kansas City and they lost to Oregon in the Elite Eight. Like, that was the opposite approach where everybody was for Kansas, but there was like this nervous energy because, oh, shoot, like the crowd had it. Oh, shoot, they might blow this. And I think that can come into play in this tournament. Well, we're not really going to have a lot of that with not many people in the building. So that could be something where maybe we don't have as many upsets as usual just because of that. Who knows? But I do think of like the energy in a building can carry a lower seed sometimes.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so we're going to just about wrap it up here. We got to a few of your comments. I'm just double checking, making sure we're not missing anybody. But
another shout out to Ethiopia.
Yeah, look, word to Ethiopia, man. That is awesome. So, yeah, let's go to CJ Moore. Closing thoughts. Your thoughts on this bracket, this NCAA tournament. Where are we going?
I'm just happy we have it, man. I'm just happy we have it. I think it's one of those years where there are some really, really good elite teams. Like, there's some years where you're like, man, this is wide open. Anybody could win it. I think there's probably like 5 to 10 teams that could win it, but I do think like there's a reason we're going chalk, and it's because those 4 teams are another level above everybody else. But COVID could screw some things up. Like I said, I cover a lot of Kansas. Like, nobody really knows who the guy is that Kansas is not going to have out there. And then David McCormick, who carried them in the second half, was a big part of their second half of the season. He's coming off, has been out because of COVID or COVID protocols, whatever it is. So, I think it's going to be a fascinating tournament because there's so many uncertainties. But I'm just excited we have basketball. I'm excited. I'm not. Like, I this week has kept playing back in my mind, walking up to the Sprint Center, or whatever it's called, the T-Mobile Center now in Kansas City, and looking at my phone. There it is. It's done, right? Like, we're actually going to get basketball. So I'm just happy about that.
Mr. Holmes, your thoughts?
Yeah, just piggybacking on what CJ said. I mean, I'm just glad. It's been a crazy year for everyone involved, reporters, teams, coaches. Long COVID pauses. I'm just happy that we were able to get to the NCAA tournament, relatively safety, and I'm ready to dance. Let's do it.
Same. That's I'll triple down on that. It has been a challenging year. I think for everybody on a personal level and professional level, I know it's been a challenging year for college basketball players and college basketball coaches and their families and everybody involved on that side of things. And I think early in the season, there was a little doubt that this was going to happen. We went through a pretty bad winter COVID-wise generally in the country. And there was a lot of talk about, should we push this back until May? Should we do this or that? We're here now, and I think everybody's pretty excited about it. And I think it's going to be a different sort of tournament. But, having spent a lot of time in Indiana in my life, I can tell you there's nowhere better to hold the tournament and put it on. They'll be stoked for it. And it's going to be an interesting televised experience, but we're here. We did it. And I hope everybody enjoys. Thank you for coming by. March Madness, baby. Let's have a great 3 weeks, and we will talk to you along the way. For CJ Holmes, CJ Moore, I'm Eamon Brennan, all of The Athletic. Thank you guys for dropping by and having fun, and enjoy the NCAA tournament. Peace.